Can you explain what internet is?
Your link to literature, the arts, the world at your fingertips.
A series of web pages connected by hyperlinks that made the internet become something that the average person can use.
But how can we get the internet on our computer at home?
The story of Wi-Fi doesn't start in Silicon Valley, it starts in World War II. Hollywood actress Hedy Lamarr and composer George Antheil developed a radio communication system that could hop between frequencies to prevent enemy jamming. Their invention, ignored at the time, would become a cornerstone of wireless security. The world wasn't ready yet, but the seed was planted.
Fast forward to the University of Hawaii in 1971, where Dr. Norman Abrams and Dr. Franklin Kua and a team of university students created Aloha Net, a packet-based network that transmits data between the islands. It was messy, noisy, and inefficient, but ultimately revolutionary. It showed that wireless communication could work, the proof of concept that the world needed to change forever.
By the 90s, commercial interest had finally caught on. NCR introduced Wavelan into the market in 1990, a wireless alternative to wired networking solutions, a first real attempt to make wireless networking a product. The very next year, NCR submitted the Wavelan design to the IEEE 802 Landman Standards Committee, kickstarting what would become a global movement. That contribution laid the groundwork for the creation of the team that would go on to develop the IEEE 802.11 wireless standard. What began as proprietary technology was now on track to becoming something much bigger.
In 1997, the IEEE finalized 802.11. The first official Wi-Fi standard. It was slow, only 2 megabits per second, but it marked the birth of wireless freedom.
Then came Apple's iBook and the actual term Wi-Fi. Suddenly, wireless networking was no longer a lab experiment. Cafes, homes, businesses, everybody wanted to get online without wires.
We looked at the power line stuff, again, very slow and tied to the plug, and wireless was the only thing that would free you from these doggone wires. And we decided to go for it.
But with so many users and so much data flying over wireless networks, they became a prime target for hacking. The security protocol at the time was designed to protect users' data and Wi-Fi. It was known as WEP, WEP, or the wired equivalent privacy. It was fundamentally flawed and attackers could crack it within minutes. Before we show you how, please note that this video is strictly for educational purposes only. All the techniques performed in the demonstration are done on older, insecure security standards that are no longer used in the real world. So the techniques are strictly for educational purposes only. Now let's see how insecure WEP really is.
So we'll start off the attack by setting up a listener to listen for wireless traffic. After doing that, we'll set up our replay with AirPlay NG, TAC3. So basically, you are taking in R packets from the access point and then sending it back so that they are replayed, and then they'll be re-encrypted by the access point, and then you'll be able to capture them, replay them, and the attack cycle goes on and on for that. The listener will just carry on listening for all of this, capturing it, putting it in a capture file for us when we eventually kill that process. Okay, that should be enough packets collected, so we will now kill both processes, and then we will run our aircrack ng to crack the wireless password from the capture. You can see the ASCII characters there, that is the password. Part of the problem stemmed from the early US government restrictions on exporting strong encryption. As a result, WEP utilized a 40-bit encryption key known as WEP40 as part of a 64-bit encryption protocol. When we talk about the number of bits in an encryption key, this correlates to the length of the password. Once those restrictions were relaxed, a stronger version was brought out, using 104 bits for the encryption key. This was commonly referred to as WEP104. This brought the total key length to 128 bits. But even this wasn't enough. The underlying flaws in how the keys were implemented and reused made both versions vulnerable. The dream of wireless freedom was under threat.
A temporary fix, WPA, was introduced in 2003. Although this was just a patch, it introduced the Temporal Key Integrity Protocol, or TKIP. This and other advancements helped prevented key reuse attacks, replay attacks, packet injection, and forgery that had all plagued the earlier WEP. In 2004, WPA2 became the new standard. It was a major leap forward in wireless security as it replaced RC4 and TKIP with stronger encryption protocols like AES and CCMP. Everything was alright for a while.
It was around about this time that one of the most popular Wi-Fi attacks became known to man, the deauthentication attack. The premise of this attack is to set up a listener to capture the connection made between a wireless access point and a legitimate device trying to connect to the network. This is when the deauthentication part of the attack comes in. The attacker would then send off deauthentication packets in a broadcasty kind of manner, as if it was the access point in order to kick devices off the network. The legitimate device will then disconnect and then reconnect. Upon this reconnection, the attacker will capture this connection and then they would be able to crack the pre-shared key or password offline. However, this comes down to a dictionary attack where the attacker is trying to guess the correct password. So by using strong passwords and long passphrases, this decreases the likelihood of the attack being successful significantly. So we open up our terminal and we type Wi-Fi, which is the tool that we're going to be using to listen for WPA traffic. And we see our network come up that we've set up for the demo, a demo WPA2. We select it for the attack, and once it's selected, it'll try and do a PMKID capture. We can stop that because we are just going to listen for the handshake. Once we've captured the handshake, it'll go into a file and we'll actually do a brute force or a dictionary attack against that file with a password list. And you can see that there was password 123 in the word list, and it's successfully guessed that. Also in today's age, there are wireless security standards, namely 802.11w, which incorporates something called protected management frames, which help protect against deauthentication attacks. In WPA3, this standard comes in by default.
After growing accustomed to the security of WPA2, which had far surpassed that of WEP, router manufacturers introduced a neat little feature to make this setup easier for everyday users. It was called WPS, or the Wi-Fi Protected Setup, and it was a disaster. Instead of entering long passphrases, users could literally just hit a button or enter an 8-digit PIN that's normally found on the back of routers, and boom, they're connected. But that wasn't the worst part. The real problem was that the 8-digit PIN wasn't really 8 digits. It was split in half, the first 4 digits being checked, then 3, and then the last digit was a checksum. That reduced the number of combinations from 100 million to around 11,000, which meant that an attacker could brute force the PIN in roughly a few hours or even less. Suddenly, even strong WPA2 passwords could be bypassed, not by cracking them, but by using the backdoored router PIN. Convenience had once again undercut security, and this time it wasn't cryptographers, it was manufacturers to blame.
Jumping forward 10 years to 2017, the world experienced crack. Not to be confused with the stuff the finance bros were using on a 9-to-5. This was not a flaw in a manufacturer's shortcut or a misconfigured setting, but a fundamental flaw in WPA2 itself, the protocol everyone trusted. Researchers discovered that during the four-way handshake, the process in which a new device would connect to a router, the attacker was able to trick the victim into using an already in use encryption key. The attacker, acting as a malicious access point, would replay part of the handshake. This forced the device to reinstall the same encryption key again and again, each time resetting critical counters. With enough repetition, the attacker could decrypt packets, replay data, or even inject malicious content into the network traffic, all without ever knowing the Wi-Fi password. It didn't matter how strong your password was, or even what devices you were using. Every WPA2 network in the entire world was vulnerable. The most terrifying part was that the flaw wasn't in a particular product, but within the standard itself.
In the wake of crack, trust in Wi-Fi security had been badly shaken. So, in 2018, a new standard was born, a fresh, clean slate, WPA3. It wasn't just a patch, it was a fundamental overhaul of how Wi-Fi security works. WPA3 introduced simultaneous authentication of equals, or SAEs, which is a far more secure way for devices to exchange keys during the handshake phase, replacing the aging and vulnerable pre-shared key or PSK method used in WPA2. This meant offline dictionary attacks where attackers guessed millions of passwords against captured handshakes were no longer viable. Even better, forward secrecy was added, so that meant if someone had cracked your password, they couldn't go back and see your old traffic. For public networks, WPA3 introduced opportunistic wireless encryption, which finally brought encryption to open hotspots like cafes and public airports without requiring a password at all. It also enforced PMFs, which are protected management frames, which protect users from deauthentication and disassociation attacks by default. All of this added up to a huge leap forward: stronger encryption, better protection, and modern cryptography. After years of patchwork fixes, this felt like a new beginning, or so we thought.
Barely a year after its release, the excitement around WPA3 took a serious hit. A set of vulnerabilities, collectively known as Dragon Blood, tore into the early implementations of the standard. Specifically, Dragon Blood targeted the simultaneous authentication of equals, the new WPA3 handshake mechanism that was supposed to replace WPA2's pre-shared keys. SAE misconfigurations could allow for dictionary attacks. However, in the case of WPA3 and SAE, when you're performing a dictionary attack, you have to do it in real time. This means that you are doing it against the access point or router, which makes dictionary attacks a little bit more infeasible. Some flaws allowed for downgrade attacks. This is tricking the device into falling back into WPA2 or even WPA1 authentication. This is due to backwards compatibility. It became clear, even though WPA3 was solid as a standard, the real-world implementations were anything but. The lesson: even the best cryptography means nothing if poorly deployed. And once again, a security standard that had promised peace of mind had opened the doors to new attacks, and WPA3, the confidence in it, had begun to crack.
Today, even with WPA3 improving Wi-Fi security, attacks haven't stopped, they've just changed shape. In 2024, researchers at Belgium's KU Leuven, Heloise Gollier and Matthew Van Hoff discovered a new vulnerability called SSID confusion, which gave a modern edge to an old-school trick, the evil twin attack. Here's how it works. An attacker sets up a fake access point, copying the trusted one's name or SSID, something like airport free Wi-Fi or company Wi-Fi. Some devices, especially in businesses, will automatically connect to that network. They do this because they don't really check if it's genuine, and that's where things go wrong. The attacker doesn't need to crack passwords. Instead, they can steal login credentials, intercept traffic, or even trick the devices into sending data to their fake networks. Setting this up isn't hard. With the right tools, it just takes a few minutes. What makes this attack dangerous is that it relies on bad settings. So companies not checking certificates properly or users leaving auto join on. It's a reminder that even secure networks can be fooled by taking advantage of how the users and devices connect to it, not by destroying the technology. In the end, it's not all about encryption, it's about assumption. And trusting the wrong Wi-Fi network can sometimes be all it takes. A little side note that if you guys want to see how evil twin attack actually works, we've provided an educational demo in the link below. You can click that and watch it.
So with all of these attacks, web brute forcing, crack, SSID confusion, evil twin attacks, is your Wi-Fi actually safe? The answer is no. Just kidding. The answer is yes, if you take control. First, change the network name and password. Don't stick with TP-Link1234 or Netgear. Attackers use this to guess what kind of router you have, and also from that to guess what kind of default passwords might still work. Make your Wi-Fi name unique and also change the default admin login password to the router. If your router supports WPA3, enable this because this will make dictionary attacks a lot harder and the encryption is stronger. If your router doesn't have WPA3, then make sure your WPA2 passphrase is long and unique. Third, disable WPS because this is an easy way in for attackers, especially with the PIN method. make sure to turn it off. Fourth, stop your devices from auto-connecting to any network with the same name. That's how evil twin attacks work. They see a familiar network name and they just join. Go into your device's auto-join settings and disable it. Keep your router firmware up to date. These updates are not just for speed, they also patch security holes. Every now and again, log onto your router and just hit that update button. And finally, use a guest network. Put all your smart TVs, fridges, ovens, chairs, tables on a guest network that's separate from where you would put your PCs and everything so that if somebody gets onto that guest network, they don't have access to the traffic of your devices that are sending off sensitive data. Now, if you are running a business or a corporate network, then there's more that you can do. Use 802.1x authentication with certificate validation so that devices will only connect to networks that they can actually verify. Turn off open networks wherever possible and use WPA3 Enterprise and protected management frames. And finally, deploy wireless intrusion and detection systems so that you can monitor for rogue access points and suspicious Wi-Fi behavior.
The story about Wi-Fi isn't just about faster speeds and broader coverage. It's a constant battle between convenience and security, between innovation and the unintended security flaws it creates. From frequency hopping in wartime to the coffee shops of today, Wi-Fi has changed everything, and its story isn't over.